The late afternoon sun was dropping low behind the trees in Riverside Park, throwing long shadows across the grass in Asheville, North Carolina. The air had that crisp autumn bite to it, carrying the smell of dry leaves and a faint hint of wood smoke from somewhere far off. I was kneeling beside an old, beat-up picnic table, my worn backpack wide open in front of me, handing out sandwiches wrapped in foil to a small group of homeless folks who had gathered beneath the huge oak trees. My dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and the knees of my faded jeans were smudged with dirt from volunteering earlier that morning. Even though I felt the tiredness pulling at my eyes, I made sure to give everyone a warm smile, ask how their day was going, call them by name, and show them the kind of respect the world didn't seem willing to give them anymore. "Here you go, Mr. Patterson," I said softly as I passed a sandwich to an older man with a gray beard. "Got extra turkey in there today." "You're an angel, Luna," he told me, his hands shaking a little as he took the food. "Your daddy would be proud." That one sentence hit me hard, even though I tried not to show it. My father, Cole Hayes, had been killed in action in Afghanistan 3 years earlier. I carried him with me in everything I did, especially in my work at the Veterans Outreach Shelter on the east side of town. That shelter had been his dream, a place where veterans trying to return to civilian life could get help, a roof, and people who understood them. After he died, I made up my mind that I would keep that dream alive. Every day after my community college classes, I headed straight there. I was just finishing up the last few sandwiches when a sharp whistle split the quiet afternoon. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" I looked up to see Troy Brennan stomping toward me like he owned the whole park. His hand rested on his belt in that over-the-top way he always used when he wanted to look important. Troy was early 30s, thick around the middle, with a scowl that looked permanently carved into his face. He wore his security uniform like armor, the metal badge on his chest flashing in the sun. "I'm helping people," I said as I stood to face him. "Is something wrong, officer?" "It's security guard," he snapped. "And yeah, there's a problem." He pointed sharply at the group behind me. "You're drawing vagrants here. This is a family park. These people don't belong." I felt a hot surge rise in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "This is a public park, Troy. They have just as much right to be here as anyone else. I'm not doing anything illegal." His eyes narrowed into slits. Troy had been working in the Asheville park system for a couple of years, and he was well known for throwing his weight around, especially toward folks who didn't have the power to push back. There had been complaints, plenty of them, but his supervisor, Wade Kendrick, always made sure they disappeared. Wade believed the same thing Troy did, that homeless people were problems to be pushed out of sight. "You're distributing food without a permit," Troy said, stepping in too close, trying to intimidate me. "City Ordinance 47B. You gotta leave." "That ordinance only applies to businesses selling food," I replied, drawing from everything I'd learned while advocating for the shelter. "This is charity. Nobody's selling anything." His face reddened instantly. Troy hated being corrected, especially by someone he thought was just a kid. His ego was thin as paper and twice as easy to tear. "Don't get smart with me, girl," he growled. "I don't care what you think you know. You're causing a disturbance and trespassing on public property." I cut in, disbelief in my voice. "Do you even hear yourself right now?" The folks around us started backing away. They knew this look. They'd seen it too many times. A man in uniform using his authority as a weapon. Without warning, Troy grabbed my backpack and flipped it upside down. Sandwiches, water bottles, and the old photograph of my father in his military uniform spilled across the grass. "That's destruction of property," I blurted out as I dropped to my knees, scooping my things together with shaking hands. "I checked the picture first." "Are you kidding me?" "Sue me," he sneered. "Better yet, gather your little homeless crew and get out of my park before I call the real cops and have every one of you arrested for loitering." I stood slowly, holding the photo against my chest. My throat felt tight, and tears pressed hard behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall, not in front of him. "You know what?" I said quietly. "Fine, you win. We'll go. But let me tell you something. Cruelty like this doesn't just disappear. It has a way of circling back." Troy barked out a laugh. "Is that a threat? You threatening an officer of the law?" "I'm not threatening anybody," I said. "I'm just saying maybe you should try treating people like human beings. You don't know who anyone is, or who they know." "Oh please," he scoffed. "Look at you. Look at them. You're nobody. You think you scare me? I didn't answer. I finished gathering my things, helped Mr. Patterson up, and started leading everyone toward the park exit. Troy stood there with his arms crossed, pleased with himself. But what he didn't notice was Mr. Patterson pulling a beat-up cell phone from his coat pocket. Troy couldn't hear his low voice, but I could see the tension in Patterson's shoulders. "Rex, it's Patterson," he murmured. "I'm fine, but we got a situation at Riverside Park. It's Cole's girl." "Yeah, Luna. Some guard just embarrassed her in front of everyone. Dumped her food. Threatened her." "Yeah, I know. Can you spread the word?" "Thanks, brother." The call lasted less than half a minute. Around here, in Asheville's tight veteran and biker community, 30 seconds was more than enough to start a fire burning. About 20 minutes after that whole mess in the park, I was leaning against my security truck, finishing up the incident report on my phone and sipping coffee from a dented thermos. I'd already dressed the story up a bit, making myself sound like I'd stopped some kind of homeless takeover and saved a family park from turning into a campground. In my head, I was already imagining how I'd brag about it later at the bar. That's when I heard it. At first, it was faint, a low rumble, almost like distant thunder rolling across the valley. But the sky above Asheville was crystal clear, brushed with streaks of orange and purple as the sun dipped behind the mountains. The sound deepened, grew heavier, fuller, and then it clicked. Those weren't storm clouds. Those were engines. I lifted my eyes from the phone, and the look of confidence I'd been wearing slipped clean off my face. The rumble turned into a roar, the kind that vibrates right through your ribs. And then, from every entrance of Riverside Park, the motorcycles started coming in. Not one or two. Dozens. Lines of them. Harleys, Indians, Triumphs, even custom-built choppers, all rolling into the parking lot like a coordinated wave of steel and thunder. And every single rider wore a biker vest covered in patches. Veterans, MC, Iron Brotherhood, Road Warriors, Mountain Riders. Some of the vests carried military insignia, Marine Corps, Army, Navy, Air Force. These weren't just bikers showing off. These were men and women who had been to war. My coffee slipped from my hand and splattered across the asphalt as the bikes circled around me, forming a tight semicircle. One by one, the engines cut off in perfect sequence, dropping the whole park into a silence so heavy it felt louder than the roaring had been. 83 motorcycles. 83 riders. All of them here, because of what I'd done. From the center of the formation, a tall man climbed off his bike. He looked mid-50s, long steel gray hair pulled back, beard to match. His biker vest told a whole lifetime of service, 2 tours in Iraq, a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star. And across his chest, stitched in thick thread, was one name. Rex. Rex Morgan had served with Cole Hayes, Luna's dad. They'd fought in the same dirt, survived the same ambushes, buried the same brothers. And when Cole was killed, Rex stood over the casket and made a promise. "Your daughter will never stand alone." He'd kept that promise quietly over the years, sending donations under the radar, checking in from a distance, making sure Luna had support even when she never knew who it came from. So when Patterson called earlier, it took Rex less than half a minute to mobilize every vet biker within 50 miles. Rex stepped forward, voice calm but heavy with authority. "You, Troy Brennan." I tried standing a little straighter, trying to match his confidence, but my hand shook when I reached for my radio. "Yeah, I'm Brennan. Who are you, and what do you think you're doing here? You're on municipal property, without authorization." "We're citizens," Rex answered. "Standing in a public park. Same as that girl you kicked out 20 minutes ago." I felt my stomach twist. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," Rex said, his voice tightening. "Luna Hayes. You dumped her food on the ground. You threatened her. You humiliated her in front of people who rely on her kindness. That ring a bell?" "Look," I said, trying to regain control of the moment. She violated park ordinances. I was doing my job. I turned to the crowd. "Folks, helping homeless people without a permit violates. Brothers, sisters," Rex called out loudly. "Did any of you know it's against the rules to help homeless veterans?" A low, disapproving rumble rolled through the semicircle. Many of these riders had been homeless once, or had brothers in arms who were. They didn't take kindly to people abusing authority against their own. Just then, my supervisor, Wade Kendrick, rolled in with his municipal truck. He climbed out, trying to look braver than he felt. Wade was early 40s, soft around the middle, hair thinning out, and he always had that pinched, suspicious look. He walked right up to Rex. "I'm the park supervisor," he announced loudly. "You all need to disperse immediately, or I'll have the police here to arrest every one of you for unlawful assembly." Rex didn't even bother giving him his full attention. "You must be the one who trained Brennan," he said. "Tell me something. Is it standard procedure to harass young women for doing charity work?" The individual in question, Wade began. "Say her name," Rex interrupted. "She's not the individual in question. She's a person. A good one. Say her name." Wade's jaw ticked. "Fine. Luna Hayes was distributing food without a permit and you're lying." A new voice cut in. A woman in her 60s stepped forward from the line of writers. Tess Braun, former city councilwoman, now a civil rights attorney and proud weekend writer with the vet community. She held up her phone, the Asheville Municipal Code glowing on the screen. "There is no permit required for non-commercial food distribution," Tess said clearly. "Ordinance 47B specifically exempts charity. So either your officer doesn't know the law, or he knew it and used his authority to bully her anyway. Which one is it?" Wade stumbled over his words. There were other factors. Littering, public disturbance, loitering. Loitering, Rex barked. "Hungry people accepting food is loitering now? Tell me, all those families picnicking here every weekend, are they loiterers too? Or is it only a problem when it's people you personally don't like?" I finally opened my mouth, desperation creeping into my tone. "You don't understand. Those people make families uncomfortable. They cause problems. Those people," Rex said quietly, "are veterans. They served this country. They fought for your freedom to wear that badge. And when they came home broken, the system failed them. People like Luna, people like Cole Hayes, stepped in to help. And you repaid that kindness with cruelty." Wade's expression shifted as the name hit him. He knew it. Everyone in Asheville's municipal system knew it. Cole Hayes wasn't just a veteran. He was a local hero whose death had stopped the entire city for 3 days. "That's right," Rex said firmly. "Luna Hayes is Cole's daughter. She's been keeping her father's dream alive at the Veterans Outreach Shelter for the last 3 years. And your boy here just tossed her things on the ground and humiliated her in front of everyone," Rex said, staring straight at Wade. I watched Troy's face drain of color, then turn a sickly shade of green. I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't care," Rex cut in. "That's the whole problem. You saw a young woman helping people you think are beneath you, and you used your badge to push her around. Well, let me give you a little reality check. Cole Hayes had a family. We are that family. And when you mess with his daughter, you mess with all of us." Behind him, the bikers fired up their engines in perfect unison, the noise so loud it rattled the air. It wasn't aggression, it was solidarity, a wall of sound that said we stand with her. Over the next 72 hours, 3 things happened. 3 things that turned a quiet park fight into a national story. The first thing was the video. A mom named Brooke Chun had been recording her kids on the playground, and without realizing it, she'd caught the whole confrontation between Troy and Luna. Every second, every cruel word. The moment he dumped her backpack. The veterans he dismissed like they were trash. The footage hit social media and exploded. Within hours, it was spreading across town. By morning, local news grabbed it. Then regional. Then national. It was the kind of story the internet couldn't resist. Arrogant security guard bullies hero's daughter. Then 80 bikers roll in. Soon Riverside Park was swarmed with news vans. Reporters hovered outside City Hall. And Troy Brennan's name became the new shorthand for abuse of authority. But the video showed something else too. In the background, barely visible, were the burned-out remains of the old Veterans Outreach Shelter. The same shelter that had belonged to Cole. The same one Luna had been trying to keep alive. That building had been condemned 6 months earlier, not because it was falling apart, but because city inspectors had discovered sudden code violations that needed expensive repairs. And when Luna filed the paperwork to get the work started, her permits were delayed, lost, and denied. Funding requests went unanswered. But the shelter wasn't the problem. The land it sat on was. Investigative journalist Dean Hartley started pulling the thread, and pretty soon the whole sweater came apart. He uncovered emails connecting Wade Kendrick and members of the Planning Commission to a redevelopment project, high-end condos with mountain views. The shelter was in the way, and the homeless veterans it served had no one powerful enough to fight for them. Not until now. The second thing that happened was the uprising. People didn't just get mad, they mobilized. Veterans groups from across the country spoke up. Donations poured in, not to the city, but straight to a fund Rex and the bikers had set up. In 48 hours, they'd raised over $300,000 to rebuild the shelter. And for the first time in a long time, the homeless weren't invisible. Mr. Patterson, the same elderly vet Luna had fed that afternoon, agreed to be interviewed on camera. He talked about Vietnam, PTSD, the nights he slept in his car. Then he talked about Luna. That girl treated me like I was her own family, he said, voice breaking. She never asked how I ended up on the street. She asked what I needed. That's who Cole raised. That's who that guard tore down. And that's who this country ought to be protecting. His words hit the nation like a punch. The third thing was justice. Not perfect, but real. Troy Brennan was fired. The investigation uncovered years of complaints that Wade had buried. With public pressure mounting, and Tess Braun preparing a civil rights lawsuit, the city had no choice but to let Troy go and issue a formal apology to Luna. Wade wasn't so lucky either. He was placed on administrative leave while investigators dug into the shelter scandal. Dean's reporting revealed emails showing Wade had intentionally blocked repairs to force the shelter's closure. Criminal charges were on the table. And then came the biggest shift of all. The Asheville City Council called an emergency meeting. Faced with the national spotlight and thousands of angry citizens, they voted unanimously to turn the shelter land over to a community trust. They also pledged $500,000 in city funds to match the private donations. The Veterans Outreach Shelter would rise again, bigger, safer, stronger. A week later, on a cool evening, Luna stood in the same spot where Troy had tried to break her spirit. But this time, she wasn't alone. Rex stood beside her. The bikers stood behind her. Veterans, neighbors, city officials, everyone who'd realized too late what they'd helped destroy, showed up for her. She stepped up to the microphone, hands steady, voice sure. "A week ago," she began, "I was humiliated right here in this park for trying to help people. And I won't lie, it hurt. It hurt to be treated like a criminal for doing what my father taught me was right. But something happened afterward that I didn't expect." She looked back at Rex and the riders behind him. "I learned I'm not alone. I learned my father's legacy isn't just a shelter or a dream. It's all of you. It's a community that believes we show who we really are by how we treat the most vulnerable among us." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "Troy Brennan was wrong to treat me the way he did. But he was wrong about something else too. He said we were nobodies. He thought helping people meant nobody cared about us, that we had no power. He was wrong. We are somebody. We're a community. And when you attack one of us, you attack all of us." The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, a wave of emotion rolling through the park. When the noise settled, she went on. "I don't want revenge. I don't want Troy Brennan to suffer. What I want is change. Real change. I want a city that sees homeless veterans as people deserving of dignity. I want leaders who honor their promises. And I want young people to know that doing the right thing matters, even when it's hard." Rex stepped forward and put a steady hand on her shoulder. "Your father would be proud of you," he said. Cole believed in action over words, in helping those who couldn't stand alone. You honored him better than any monument ever could. Luna finally let her tears fall. "Thank you," she told the crowd. "Thank you for standing with me, for proving that sometimes when someone tries to knock you down, an army shows up to lift you back up." The event ended with a slow, powerful ride through downtown Asheville. 83 motorcycles rumbling down Main Street in honor of Cole Hayes and in support of his daughter. People lined the sidewalks waving signs. "Heroes help heroes. Luna Hayes for City Council. Veterans first." As the sun dipped behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the sky gold and rose, Luna rode on the back of Rex's motorcycle. She felt the wind on her face, the engine humming beneath her, and she thought about her father, about everything he'd taught her, everything he'd built, and everything she now carried forward. Troy Brennan thought he could make me feel small. He thought he could shut me up, make me feel powerless and invisible. But instead, he ended up showing me something I hadn't fully realized about myself and about the world around me. He reminded me that kindness is never wasted. That standing up for people, especially the ones everyone else overlooks, still matters. And he proved something else too. The strongest force out there isn't authority, and it sure isn't fear. It's community. People united for the right reasons can move mountains. I won't pretend I suddenly had everything figured out. The shelter still needed to be rebuilt. Veterans still needed help. Help that was hard, messy, and often thankless. And I knew there would always be more people like Troy Brennan out there. Folks who saw compassion as weakness and treated vulnerable people like easy targets. But I also knew something else. I wasn't going to face any of it alone. I had Rex and the bikers standing behind me like a wall of steel. I had Mr. Patterson and the vets who'd taught me more about strength and dignity than any textbook ever could. I had Tess, Dean, Brooke, and countless others who had heard my story and decided to fight for change in their own towns, their own cities. And most of all, I still had my father's memory, not something heavy to carry, but something steady to guide me. Dad always told me heroism wasn't about big speeches or getting your name carved in stone. It was about showing up every day to do what's right, even when nobody sees you, even when it costs you something. He lived that truth, and now it was my turn to honor it. Troy Brennan had tried to take something from me that day in the park. But instead of breaking me, he sparked something none of us expected, a movement built on compassion, carried by a community of warriors who still believed in fighting for the people who couldn't fight for themselves. And that's how real change usually starts. Not with politicians or big promises, but with one moment. One person refusing to stay quiet. One community deciding enough is enough. One act of cruelty that becomes the spark for justice. Later that night, the motorcycles rolled out into the dark, their engines humming like one steady heartbeat. Those riders weren't just leaving the park. They were carrying forward a legacy that would outlive every ounce of Troy's bitterness. And somewhere in that rumble, in that rising sense of purpose, I realized something I never expected. I was becoming a hero in my own way. Not because I wanted the attention, not because I thought I deserved the title, but because I refused to stop caring, even when the world gave me every reason to walk away.